Welcome in to the college football recap. Good morning, everybody. It is great to have you on board. My name is Jeff Cameron, and it's time to take a look around the top 25. First, let me let you know who's going to be our guest today. We've got three good ones, always excited to do this. Spencer Holbrook going to join us here in a few minutes from Letterman Row. Obviously, Ohio State gets a big win on the road, and they come from behind in the fourth quarter and take care of business there. Also, Tyler Horka going to join us from Blue and Gold. Notre Dame with an impressive road win against Syracuse, running the football. That's 2 straight now for Notre Dame. And then finally, Brent Hubbs, perhaps covering the hottest team in all of college football, VolQuest, the site. Tennessee just boat races Kentucky there. Not much of a game. All right, so those are our three guests. They'll join us here starting in about 10 minutes, a little less than that, and we'll go through and get their thoughts. All great on three sites, all great guys covering this sport we love so much. So let's take a look. Speaking of the top 25, we'll see some numbers up there. You'll see some scores, and I'll go through the highlights of the day. I'm actually going to start briefly with this Ohio State win, only because I think that I could just watch JT Tuimoloau play over and over and over again. It was a day for the ages. It was his strip sack that set up number 2 Ohio State for a separation score in the fourth quarter, then a pick 6 to cap a spectacular performance by him. They get the win over Penn State 44-31. Moving on within that top 25, we'll jump over to Georgia now. They beat Florida 42-20. This game got weird, didn't it? Georgia led big 28-3 at one point. It turned into a 28-20 game, but the Dogs answered with consecutive touchdown drives to seal their 10th consecutive victory. Georgia beat Florida for the 5th time in 6 years. In that game, Stetson Bennett goes 19 of 38 for 316 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Brock Bowers caught 5 passes for 154 yards, including one amazing 73-yard score in which the ball was tipped around several times over by Amari Burney. But that's what that guy does, right? Tennessee, I mentioned them. Again, we'll have Brent Hubbs on from VolQuest to talk it through. 44-6, which is, to me, the most impressive performance of the day. Jalen Hyatt, every time we talk about college football, not just Tennessee, but college football, we have to lead with Jalen Hyatt. Another spectacular day. I want to ask I want to ask Brent how it is that guy's open all the time. He's just always open. 5 passes, 138 yards, 2 touchdowns. This game's never close. 44-6, and what is kind of a surprising outcome there. I mentioned Michigan. They beat Michigan State 29-7. Blake Corum, all he does is rack up 100-plus yard games, 177 yards, and scored twice. Jake Moody made 5 field goals. He was tired. They remain unbeaten. The Wolverines are 8-0 now, 5-0 in the Big Ten, scored 26 points, straight points in Ann Arbor after falling behind briefly there in that first quarter. The Spartans moved to 3-5, 1-4 in the conference. TCU wins over West Virginia, 41-31. Max Duggan throws for 3 touchdown passes. Kendre Miller every week, 120 yards and a score. TCU. Big plays in this game over West Virginia in Morgantown. Oregon, California, that game goes 42-24. One of the great stories of college football this year is Bo Nix. He accounts for 6 touchdowns in this game. Threw for 3, ran for 3, was incredibly the guy, again, that every week we look at the numbers and we're like, that's the same Bo Nix that we saw play earlier in his career. Yeah, it is. Yeah, he scores a lot these days. He threw for 412 of the Ducks, 586 yards, the most against the Golden Bears in 6 seasons under their coach, Justin Wilcox. We move forward. Southern Cal survives 45-37 over Arizona. Caleb Williams, have yourself a day. Threw for 411 yards and 5 touchdowns. Southern Cal scored 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, basically just to outlast Arizona and Tucson. The Trojans, though, now 7-1, 5-1 in the Pac-12. Of course, they had a little extra time to prepare for this one after that setback and the exhilarating 43-42 loss to Utah. Ole Miss downs Texas A&M on the road. They do it 31-28. The woes continue for Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M. We jump back over to the Ole Miss side, though, and note the Jackson Dart pass for 3 touchdowns. Ole Miss won in College Station. Might also note that Quinshawn Judkins rushed for 205 yards in this game. Scored a touchdown with 7:18 remaining. That helped Ole Miss rebound from its first loss of the season. By the way, he's rushed for over 1,000 yards right now. And as for Texas A&M, they may have found something Connor Wegman was 28 of 44, 338 yards, 4 touchdowns. But Texas A&M lost their 4th straight game for the school's longest slide since they lost 4 straight back into the 2005 season. They're now just 3-5, 1-4 on the year. Kansas State beats Oklahoma State in a game that nobody could see coming. There's no way any of us would have thought 48-0 would be your final, but it was. And that is the number 9 team in the land they knocked off. Will Howard passed for 296 yards and 4 touchdowns. 6-2 is Kansas State. 4-1 the Big 12. They rout the Cowboys in Manhattan, who are now 6-2, 3-2. That is the first shutout loss for Oklahoma State since 2009. Deuce Vaughn ran for 158 yards. Illinois quietly keeps winning football games. They do it this time to Nebraska, who's not very good. 26-9. The national rushing leader is Chase Brown for Illinois. That's how they win football games, play good defense, and run it. 149 yards scored on a consecutive series in the second quarter. That allowed them to take charge in Lincoln. The Illini now sit at 7-1, 4-1 in the Big Ten, and they beat Nebraska for the 3rd year in a row. They won a 6th straight game for the first time since 2011 and secured their first winning regular season. Have the Illini since 2007. Elsewhere, Central Florida knocks off number 20 Cincinnati 25-21. The Knights are 6-2, 3-1. Ended a 19-game win streak by Cincinnati against conference opponents. So there was a bit of a surprise there. Mizzou knocks off South Carolina 23-10, and they proved to be unkind visitors. That game was in South Carolina. They're now 4-4, 2-3 in the SEC. That means it's goodbye for the top 25 for South Carolina after this. Elsewhere, Navy beat Temple in overtime. We always try to update you on some of those military scores as well. Late Friday, you had an East Carolina 27-24 game against BYU that was well played, and Coastal Carolina beat Marshall. All right, so there it is. We've had an opportunity to peruse the top 25. It's great. Why don't we start with Spencer Holbrook, Letterman Row, the website. He is frequent guest of the show last year, and again, now we have him on here. Spencer, how are you, buddy? Good to see you.
It's good to see you too, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so how many times have you watched the gazillion replays of JT Tuimoloau and the day he had? I could watch this all day long. I've never seen a player singularly just dominate a game in every facet. It's sacks, it's fumbles, it's caused interceptions, it's actual interceptions, pick sixes, fumble recoveries. He did it all.
Yeah, it was one of the most astonishing defensive performances I can remember. We were in the building when Chase Young had his 4 sacks against Penn State or against Wisconsin in 2019 in that 38-7 win. And that's really the only thing that I could think to compare it to was what Chase Young did and the impact he had. The only thing was, Wisconsin was trying to negate what Chase Young was doing. Penn State just didn't seem to have an interest in going away from Tuimoloau. After a few different plays, you would think that Penn State would have tried to scheme around him, and instead they tried to screen him. They tried to chip him. They tried to do a multitude of things to slow down what he was doing, and he just continued to make plays. And so it was really one of the best defensive performances I can remember. JT Tuimoloau put himself on the college football map yesterday, and if that's what Ohio State's going to get from its defensive line, this team's going to be really hard to beat.
Yeah, I mean, deflected passes, INT, sack, strip sack, pick six, fumble recovery, six total tackles, 2 sacks, 3 tackles for a loss, a pass breakup. I mean, I went and read all the stuff you guys wrote on Letterman Row this morning early just to go back, and I watched this game, most of it, and I try to watch all the games, certainly in which we're going to have guests on. But every time I came back over to that game, he was making a play, and I thought, I'm not seeing this right. Am I right? Does he have all these numbers? Had you seen this gearing towards that? Has he been on the verge of a performance? Maybe not like this. I mean, nobody can predict this, but a dominant performance like this in the past? Because, frankly, I think for outsiders, not everybody would have really thought of him as a household name. Now they will.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because in 2018, and I hate to keep going back to Chase Young, but in 2018, as a sophomore, Larry Johnson talks a lot about the freshman to sophomore jump. The year 2 is when the guys start to show that they can be a superstar. Year 3 is when they are a superstar. Chase Young in 2018 had a breakout game on the road at Penn State, had the fourth down stop to seal that 1-point win over Penn State in a whiteout. JT Tuimoloau had been very close to many, many sacks. I mean, the first play of the Notre Dame game back in the season opener, he was a quarter second away from blowing that play up and just got there a little too late. Well, when you get a quarterback who's indecisive like Sean Clifford, and then you mix it with the JT Tuimoloau being so close to so many sacks for so many weeks, until the Iowa game, he didn't have a sack on the year because he was just so close. But then he had a couple last week, and then you get an indecisive Sean Clifford. all of those factors came together for him. And now you're going to see him, I believe, take off, because now he's not only playing really well anyways, but he's playing confidently. He knows he can make an impact like that. And you're going to see him continue to maybe not have 2 interceptions and, 2 sacks, 3 tackles for loss,
Yeah.
pass deflection, the whole 9 yards, the forced fumble, but you will see him continue to have a massive impact on what offenses do, because now you always have to know where 44 is, because you know the impact he can have on a game.
Yeah, and also I don't want to. We'll circle back. We always got to circle back and talk about C.J. Stroud's day, but I don't want to overlook the importance, especially in a tight ball game like this, of the punter. Jesse Mirko was really, really good in this game, and I think if you guys wrote up average over 52 yards a punt, hey, that'll work, especially while you're trying to find your legs. The Ohio State offense is eventually going to score, right? They seem to come in waves, but in the interim, it's nice to win the field position battle.
Absolutely. And, he's just one of those weapons. He didn't have a great year last year. I was kind of wondering how he would be this year. Ohio State doesn't really need its punter very often, to be honest with you, because a lot of times it's just racking up points. But when your offense is struggling to put points on the board and, you miss a field goal there, the field position battle, it becomes important. And for Jesse Mirko to go out there and like I said in my story, to uncork 3 punts of greater than 50 yards, to pin Penn State inside the 20 a couple different times, inside the 20 once, 50-plus yard punt 3 different times. Ruggles had 3 field goals, and then Mirko has 3 punts of over 50 yards. That's a good day on special teams. And this is an Ohio State team that hasn't been great on special teams. But when Jesse Mirko's hitting those bombs for those punts, and then you get this defense rolling with that pass rush and that run defense, you're talking about a pretty good combination of, okay, the offense isn't working. You can still count on a good punter to go out there, get you into field position game, and then you count on your defense to make a play to get the ball back for that offense, who is eventually going to figure it out.
Yeah, and that's what brings us to C.J. Stroud. And I was going to ask you, Spencer, obviously we get a lot of people watching from all around the country, and they go to these different On3 sites that we have, obviously, and the one you run there, Letterman Row, and to find out areas of weakness for teams they don't cover, or areas of strength for teams that they don't cover. So they come to you guys. And I was going to say, is that the lone area that Ohio State fans are worried about? Because there certainly isn't a lot to be too concerned with Ohio State. They're doing a lot of things really, really well. Was it just special teams coming into this game that some people might raise an eyebrow at?
Well, I mean, you see what Parker Washington was able to do on this secondary. Cameron Brown is out right now, starting cornerback. J.K. Johnson didn't have his finest day, but he's only a sophomore, and he's just working to get better. They haven't been great on the edges as far as cornerback play is concerned, but they're getting better. They're getting more confident. I think better days are ahead for J.K. Johnson. Jordan Hancock's a guy who's coming back from injury still. They have him on one of those, snap counts, trying to really ease him back into the lineup. And so I think it's corner on the outside and being able to take away those big plays. Michigan's got some weapons. Maryland has some weapons, kind of like Penn State had. And you saw Parker Washington have 180 yards receiving. That's definitely a concern. But then after that, it's probably just, a little bit of those special teams things that, you'd like to clean up. But I wouldn't even really call those a concern. Corner is probably the concern. I don't think special teams would be the concern.
Okay. C.J. Stroud, 354 yards and a touchdown on 26 completions. More importantly, though, 128 of those and comes in the fourth quarter with the touchdown toss mixed in there. The thing about that guy and watching him play, we all know the ability. We know the receivers. We know how talented this offense is, how fun it is to watch. But also, CJ's a guy that makes plays when you have to make plays. He's a guy that makes plays in crucial situations. It's not just that he's good and he's racking up numbers. He's making plays with the game on the line as well. Obviously, I don't know how much more there can be said about CJ Stroud. If there's any more insight you want to lend to all of us out here, feel free. I mean, he's a Heisman candidate for a reason. We get it. And he continues to add to those numbers and moments that Heisman voters remember.
Yeah, the legacy of CJ Stroud is being built, week by week. And, Ohio State needed a touchdown pass the last play of the third quarter against Notre Dame to take the lead. It was 10-7. Ohio State's offense was struggling. CJ Stroud throws a post route to a walk-on and hits a touchdown pass to win, to put the Buckeyes ahead for good. That's a clutch moment that Ohio State had to have. Ohio State needed a big drive after going down 21-16 yesterday to Penn State on the road. That crowd was absolutely rocking. 108,000 people were on their feet screaming. CJ Stroud delivers 2 strikes, and then you get Travion Henderson hits a seam. That's a clutch drive. JT Tuimoloau strip sack. CJ Stroud gets the ball back. 1 play later, he finds Cade Stover in the end zone. That is a clutch play. CJ Stroud is quickly becoming one of the more clutch Ohio State quarterbacks. Dwayne Haskins was great, and Justin Fields was great. CJ Stroud is great in great moments. And when you need a clutch play from your quarterback, he's got it. He needed a 3rd and 10 to Marvin Harrison Jr. to keep a drive alive. He hits him on a slant route that only Marvin Harrison Jr. could catch. And, Joey Porter Jr. didn't have a chance to get to that ball because he's playing off coverage. He made a great break on it, but CJ Stroud put it in the right place. That's where you see CJ Stroud right now, to complete 79% of his passes and to, only have 7 incompletions when he didn't have his best stuff. That it speaks to how good he is and with the high standard that we hold him to. But he's earned that high standard, and I don't think he'd want it any other way.
Yeah, now you get a little bit of a breather. I know coaches won't say that, players won't say that, but for Ohio State, it's Northwestern and Indiana, I believe, on the schedule over the next 2 games. One would think, certainly on paper, those are laughable victories for Ohio State. But you mentioned the Maryland game. Most of us circle, of course, the Michigan game. Is that what we're really doing here, a collision course to Michigan?
Yeah, and I think that's the hurdle for both Ohio State and Michigan was the Penn State game. Could Michigan take care of business in the Big House? Could Ohio State handle a road test at Penn State? Once both of those teams now are now that the Penn State game is in the rearview mirror on both of those schedules, we are looking at the possibility of 11-0 Michigan, 11-0 Ohio State in the Horseshoe at noon on November 26th. And Jeff, get your popcorn ready because that is going to be an epic showdown. I know last year was 1 versus 5 or 2 versus 5. I know a couple years ago we had the 2 versus 3 in 2016. We had 1 versus 2 in 2006. But to get these 2 heavyweights after all the offseason talk, the third base comment by Jim Harbaugh, the Ryan Day, rumor of saying hang 100 on him in 2020. I mean, you could not ask for more. Now, I will say, Michigan has to host a physically demanding Illinois program the week before that. Ohio State has to go on the road to a Maryland team that, if nothing else, is going to be explosive and toss the ball around the yard, on the outside. And Ohio State's going to have to handle that. Week 11 is, that 11th game is going to be interesting for both teams, but it looks like they're going to both survive their way to Thanksgiving weekend with the Thanksgiving leftovers, with that noon kickoff in the Horseshoe, cold Big Ten weather. With the right to go to the Big Ten title game on the line. I mean, what more could you ask for? That's going to be awesome.
One of these days, I'm going to fly up and catch that game in person. I've been to both those campuses, been on those fields, never seen them play. I've got to do it. It's what you're describing right now. If you're a college football fan, you don't even have to like either of those programs, or you could love them. But the bottom line is, if you love college football, you want to be there to see that game, and you'll be covering it, giving us the best that you have there at Letterman Row. We appreciate you, Spencer. Thanks a lot for joining us this morning, and good luck the rest of the way.
Thanks, Jeff. I really appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. Spencer Holbrook, Letterman Row, and the Buckeyes get a big win, and JT Tuimoloau is unreal in that game. I started the interview with the have yourself a day. It is deflections, interceptions, sack, strip sack, pick 6, fumble recovery, 2 sacks, 3 tackles for loss, pass breakup. I don't know that you'll find a young man have a better college football game this year than that. That was something to behold. And obviously now Ohio State finds themselves on a collision course. It is interesting what Spencer brought up there, though, about corner being a little bit of a problem. Maryland can throw it around the lot. He's right to mention the Michigan game and what they have with Illinois the week before they play Ohio State. So as football fans, college football fans who want to see that matchup with both those teams ranked high, they do still have a tiny bit of navigating to do. Tyler Horka writes for Blue and Gold. Notre Dame went on the road and got a very big win. They're now 5-3, riding a 2-game win streak. Coming up next, by the way, Clemson comes to town. Should be a fun game to cover. Tyler, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing, Jeff?
I'm doing great, man. And they did what I thought they would do, and I'm sure you did too. I know you've covered this team well for Blue and Gold all year long. Run the football. Go run the football. And I thought Estime was great. They ran the ball. Diggs was good. I mean, a lot of lining up and letting Syracuse know there are no tricks here. This is us running the football. This is how we're going to win. Are they starting to gel? This is the identity, I think it is, for Notre Dame, right? Try to play pretty good defense. Finally got on the right side of the turnover ledger and ran the ball well.
Yeah, the thing about Notre Dame is if they could only do it at home, they'd be a pretty good football team, because you saw the last couple of weeks, you lose to Stanford. Everybody thinks you got no business losing to that team, and that's probably the case. You should beat Stanford at home. Notre Dame loses to I wouldn't say barely beats UNLV, but it almost felt like a loss when they beat UNLV 44-21 a week ago, because you're sitting there thinking, man, they could have played better. But then they go on the road to Syracuse, sold out JMA Dome, and you're seeing the stats right there. Audric Estime gets the ball 20 times, carries it for 123 yards, 2 touchdowns. This is 1 week after he was benched. After 3 carries, he fumbled for the 3rd time in 4 games. Marcus Freeman said, hey, this is our identity. We're going to give you the football. Just because we stopped giving you the ball in one game doesn't mean we're not going to give it to you the next game. So you see the stats there. Logan Diggs, that was coming off a 28 carry performance for 130 yards against UNLV. So you hit the nail on the head when you said they're going to line up and they're going to run the football right at you. That's what Audric Estime said after the game. He said, we're going to run the ball at you for 60 minutes. If you could stop it, great. If you can't, we're going to keep doing it until the sun goes down. So it's what Notre Dame wanted to do. And then the flip side of this performance is they finally forced a couple of turnovers. You saw the very first play of the game, Brandon Joseph pick 6. That was huge. I think it set the tone. And then when Syracuse started coming back, what happened? Tipped ball at the line of scrimmage. Maris Leofau gets an interception. Notre Dame runs the ball, ends up going up 2 scores and kind of coasts to a victory.
Yeah, that was a cross deflection, right? And Leofau picked it off. That's I saw that play, watched a lot of that game as well. I rather enjoy that style of football, by the way, when you grab onto an identity and it involves bully ball, because this game is played a lot of different ways, but at the end of the day, winning the line of scrimmage is where it's at. And Notre Dame yesterday, they didn't just do it on the offensive side. They dominated on the defensive side as well. I think Syracuse had less than 75 yards rushing. So this is another – that is the recipe to win for Notre Dame until they're able to raise the floor a little bit at some of the skill positions. The bottom line is if you can run the ball and stop the run, you're going to win a lot of games.
Marcus Freeman wanted to do that before the season even started. You remember going back to that Ohio State game, they said, hey, the only way that we're going to win this game or have a chance to win this game is if we kind of keep the game on the ground and not let CJ Stroud do his thing. And if you remember, Notre Dame was winning that game 10-7 in the 3rd quarter, and nobody else has really done that to Ohio State all year. You've seen it. That offense has exploded. So Notre Dame was doing it before Tyler Buckner, the starting quarterback, got injured, but really – once that shoulder injury occurred in week 2 and the loss to Marshall, I think the coaches came together and they said, hey, the only way that this football team is going to be successful is if we give the ball to Audric Estime and Logan Diggs and even Chris Tyree, who didn't have his best game yesterday. But that's the thing about this team. They've got 3 guys they feel really comfortable giving the ball to. And yeah, on the other side of the ball, the defense hasn't forced those turnovers, but yesterday showed you what can happen when that finally starts occurring. They won the turnover battle yesterday for the first time all year. They had not been in the green in the turnover margin in any game all year. Yesterday it happened, and what's the result? 17-point victory over the number 16 team in the country on the road.
I was looking at Notre Dame's advanced metrics, all the numbers going into that game. I let the folks here on College Football Recap know I like to gamble a little bit. And so I'm always looking in these numbers, and almost in every metric that matters, Notre Dame's offensive line is in the top 25 in run blocking. They really have that identity. Why would you judge this program year 1, Marcus Freeman? Where would you say they're at? It's been uneven. It's a weird team. I think to a lot of people on the outside looking in, you cover them. That's why I'm asking you. I think they're a weird team. There are days I watch Notre Dame and I think you don't want to play Notre Dame. That's a tough team. They're physical. There are other days I see them. They're uneven on offense, and I think Notre Dame is not a very good team if you can get out in front of them. They're a weird team to try to pin down. How would you say year 1 is gone?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. And I guarantee you Dabo Sweeney is sitting somewhere in Clemson, South Carolina right now saying, man, I really don't want to go to South Bend. The weather's not going to be too bad, so he's probably counting his lucky stars on that. But, yeah, you don't know what you're going to get. And a couple of weeks ago, the word Jekyll and Hyde came up in a press conference, and that's kind of what it's been with Marcus Freeman. He's definitely learning on the fly. He admitted that when Notre Dame started 0-2 with the loss to Ohio State and the loss to Marshall, he flat out said, I didn't really know what was going on. And that's what you get with the first-year head coach. Your head is spinning a little bit. But then there have been times, like I said at the very beginning, they go on the road and they beat North Carolina, a team that has looked really good, has not lost since they lost to Notre Dame, and kind of whoop them 45-32. That game was not as close as that final score indicated. And then you saw, like yesterday, I think everyone thought really highly of Syracuse, and they played Clemson really close on the road, a place that's almost impossible to win, and should have won that football game. So you've got the Jekyll and Hyde. You've got the really good performances, but then you've got the head scratchers. Like I said, they're 16-14 against a Stanford team that had trouble.
That's the one, though, right, Tyler? That's the one. If they don't lose that game, we're really probably not even having the conversation. You can understand some early growing pains in year one with a coach. You have an injury at quarterback. All these things can happen, and you realize what it is. That loss gave pause. I think a lot of people went, because that's not a good Stanford team. And yet the team that beat Syracuse on the road yesterday and did it by beating them up at the line of scrimmage seems the more true identity of Notre Dame.
Yeah, because it's exactly what they're trying to be. When the head coach tells you, hey, this is what we want to do, and then you go out and you see it actually happen. Notre Dame runs for, 246 yards, and that's including a sack and a couple kneel downs. So really it was a little bit better than that. And look, 4.5 yards per carry isn't going to jump out at the screen and make anybody go, whoa, that's incredible. But when you're running the ball over 50 times and those are still your numbers, that's a pretty efficient day on the ground. 56 carries, 246 yards. That's a lot. That's letting Syracuse know this is what we're going to do. And that's a credit to Marcus Freeman, like I said, because he has told everybody from the start, hey, this is the football team that we're going to be. And as soon as Drew Pine was the starting quarterback for this football team, you knew they were a little bit limited offensively. So if you're a football team that's going to tell everyone, hey, we're running the football, and you could still do it effectively and grind out a 17-point win on the road, you're doing some of the right things. And exactly to your point, if they don't lose to Stanford a couple weeks ago, this is a team that's won 6 football games in a row after the head scratching 0-2 start. So if you can rectify some of those things, because I think there were a lot of people sitting there at 0-2 thinking this thing could go 4-8, like you saw in 2016 with Brian Kelly. And all of a sudden you're sitting there going, we don't know what this football team is going to be, not only this year, but next year. Who is Marcus Freeman going to be as a head coach? A month and a half later, we're looking at it, like you said, if they don't lose that game to Stanford, they've won 6 games in a row. This is a ranked football team. I think there would be some people picking Notre Dame to beat Clemson this week. And there might still be if Notre Dame didn't lose that game to Stanford, because you've seen some of the telltale signs that this can be a really good football team. Marcus Freeman has said that. They're a good football team that doesn't always play good.
Well, they'll have to play really good this weekend to beat Clemson, but they could. And I'm not sure that Clemson team is as dominant as we've seen previous Clemson teams. So it should be a lot of fun. Tyler, you do a great job with blue and gold. I would encourage everybody to sign up there. Just $10 right now for the annual. Thanks for joining us this morning on College Football Wrap Up. I'll talk to you again down the line. Be well, sir.
I appreciate it. Have a good Sunday.
Yeah, you too. All right, so that's Tyler Horka of Blue and Gold. And, oh, by the way, that is true. That Notre Dame team has found an identity. It's on the ground, 246 yards rushing. Moreover, they held Syracuse to less than 70 yards rushing at home. That is a bit of a surprise. Now, I said at the outset of the show this morning that I thought the story of college football, it's a pretty obvious one this year. It's Tennessee. I was fortunate enough a couple of times last year to talk with my friend Brent Hubbs of VolQuest, and he's kind enough to join us again now. Brent, how are you, sir? Good morning.
Good morning, Jeff. Hope you're doing well, my friend. Good to see you.
It's good to see you too. Hey, I want to start with this. I'm jealous. You get to cover the most exciting story in all of college football right now. This Tennessee team is something to behold. And I know most people will probably ask you about Hendon Hooker. I'll get to him. His numbers are unbelievable. How is Jalen Hyatt always open? Can you answer me how that guy is always open? The whole world knows who he is. Every Tennessee game I turn on, he's streaking down the field with nobody around him. Usually it's one of the first 2 plays of the game. It's nuts.
Yeah, it is nuts. You're exactly right. And last night in this game, to open the game, Tennessee stacks receivers on the right side. They got Cedric Tillman back from injury. They threw it to him 2 of the first 3 plays. And then they stack Hyatt behind him, and they run Josh Heupel's favorite route, and that's a switch route. And what they do is it's Cedric Tillman driving straight forward against the corner. He's trying to get the safety to turn in with him, and then they just basically run a wheel route with Jalen Hyatt, who's clean because he's in a stacked formation. Nobody can get their hands on him. And you look up, and there's a linebacker trailing, and you're going, wait a minute. There's no way in a defensive game plan that you said, hey, we want to put a linebacker on Jalen Hyatt. And so that switch route has caused a lot of teams problems. The slot receiver in Josh Heupel's offense, if you look at the history, has always been a highly productive position. When you take a guy who can run at that position, it's causing a lot of people problems. And it's not just outside the numbers. Hyatt's doing work inside the numbers. They're moving him and doing some different things. He is a great story in college football. I thought he was going to transfer at the end of last year. Wow. I really did. He He was not in a good place. His head was not in a good place. He did not play a lot last year. Valens Jones took his job, and when he got a little banged up and he never got it back, you saw him leaving the complex, Jeff. His head was down, had his earbuds in, didn't speak to anybody, just kind of in a down place in football. And he committed to the game. He committed to his craft in January. He's put in the work, and he's reaping the rewards right now. Hard to say he's not the front runner, certainly definitely in the top 2 for the Biletnikoff Award at the end of the year.
Yeah, the last time you and I talked, we were talking about where Tennessee was as a program and transformation and all. And right now, we seem so many miles removed from that conversation. You know, we're looking at a team now that a lot of people are beginning to wonder, could they win the national championship? Certainly thoughts of winning the SEC championship, thoughts of going to the college football playoff. It's a really cool story. The other part of that story is Hendon Hooker, who I think everybody who loves college football certainly saw a lot of him and did not think he would ever be this kind of player. Talk a little bit about why he's made that big leap forward now. He plays with such confidence, but he's so much better as a passer now than he was. He's really consistent. I know this offense is electrifying, but you've had a chance to cover him. He seems like a remarkable young man, at least from what I read on your site there at VolQuest. What to talk about Hendon Hooker a little bit and about how the step forward he's taken and why that's happened?
I think it starts with the mental processing, Jeff. Year 2 in a system that he fully grasped, and he's making really quick decisions. I think it starts there with Hendon Hooker. I think he knows what's coming. He's seeing things before it happens at the line of scrimmage. He's got the full playbook at his disposal. He's checking into good things. He's getting the ball out of his hands really fast. I think the other thing, too, is the growth of the Tennessee offensive line. A year ago, Hendon Hooker was sacked a lot, 20-plus sacks a year ago. He did not have time. There was a lot of things that he was kind of running for his life a little bit, if you will. This offensive line has really taken a huge step from a year ago. They've really taken a big step from early in the year. I was looking at stat up here, working on some stuff for this afternoon. I'll go ahead and throw it out now. In the Pittsburgh game, Tennessee averaged 2.6 yards rushing the football, rushed for less than 100 yards in that game. Since that game, Tennessee is averaging 4.9 yards a carry. That's doing it against Alabama. That's doing it against Kentucky. That's doing it against LSU. And so when you bring in the run game element, suddenly now defenses are having a hard time figuring out how to manage Tennessee's offense. If you want to empty the box, then Tennessee's going to run it, just like they did last night in their second scoring drive. 13 carries on a 15-play drive, which is unheard of in Josh Heupel's offense, right?
Yeah.
And so then if you feel like I've got to bring people in to stop the run and crowd the box a little bit, then you let Hendon Hooker go to work. And Hendon Hooker is managing so much of that at the line of scrimmage, Jeff. It's freeing him up to be able to make more plays because they can run the football more effectively because it's forcing defenses to make choices. And right now, defenses are having a hard time making a choice on how to stop Hendon Hooker in this Tennessee offense.
Well, let's go to the other side of the ball, Brent, because I didn't see this performance coming from the Tennessee defense. This was unreal. Kentucky could do nothing. Will Levis has been a real good player all year. They got nothing going in the passing game. They couldn't run the ball. I think they only converted on 2 third downs the whole night, if I remember it correctly. It was something to behold. That if this Tennessee defense, Brent, is going to play anything close like that, they can win the national championship.
Yeah, I don't know if they can do that on a consistent basis. Nobody saw that coming last night. If you bet that Kentucky was only going to score 6 points, then you would have taken my house because I would have taken that bet all day long because I didn't see that coming. Here's what Tennessee did a really good job of last night. Early downs, they did a great job defending the run, with the exception of the second drive of the game. They did a really good job of forcing Chris Rodriguez to bounce because they got interior defensive line penetration that didn't let Rodriguez get straight downhill on an off-tackle run play, right? He couldn't hit the A-gap. He couldn't hit that straight downhill. He had to run laterally, which is not his greatest skill. And so because of that, it slowed down the Kentucky run game greatly. Then Tennessee finally did what they have not been able to do all year long, and that is get off the field on 3rd and long. Tennessee had Kentucky in 3rd and 7 plus 10 times last night. Kentucky was 0 of 10 on 3rd downs in that situation. Florida thrived in that situation. They converted 70% of their 3rd and longs against Tennessee early in the year. That's how they stayed in the game. Tennessee finally got off the field on 3rd and long last night. Here's the one other thing about the growth of Tennessee's defense overall. Tennessee committed this offseason. They committed in the preseason to playing more bodies, forcing more guys on the field, rotating guys. They're playing 12 guys on the defensive front. It's paying dividends for them in the second half. They are a more physical team because they are a fresher football team. You don't have defensive tackles playing 60 and 70 snaps like you did Matthew Butler a year ago, keeping them fresh, making them a better four-quarter football team. The story last night, though, was what Tennessee did in the secondary. We'll see if they can do that this week against Georgia, because that was a game in the defensive backfield. Tennessee's not played like that all year long, the way they played last night, forcing those 3 interceptions. We'll see if Tennessee can do that. They did that last night with 2 backup corners. Danico Slaughter had not played corner all year long. Gets a pick on a deep ball, forces the interception that Juwan Mitchell got on a big hit on the receiver. Can they find that kind of production out of the cornerback position against Stetson Bennett and Georgia this week? Don't know. They left last night with a ton of confidence because of the way they played, though.
Well, and Brent, we'll wrap it up with this, and these are all great points by you, and I really enjoyed watching the growth of this program through your eyes and through the fine staff there at VolQuest. How big is this game, right? I mean, just seeing the constant shots of the stands of Tennessee fans believing again and showing out in full force. It's always been an awesome fan base, but now they have real hope, and it's gone beyond probably any of their wildest dreams into this season. Now, Tennessee, as we've said repeatedly this morning, could win the national championship or in a position to be one of the teams that plays for it. And now you get a real measuring stick game, but you've already had one. You beat Alabama. This is going to be fun. I know you're excited to cover this game.
No doubt. This is for the SEC East. And think about this. Through the history of Tennessee and Georgia, it's the first time these two teams will have played against each other, both ranked in the top 5. This is a matchup like you've not seen between two, quote, rivals in the SEC East. Everybody's been chasing Georgia, including Tennessee. Tennessee's chase has been accelerated by the growth of Hendon Hooker and what they've done. Are they there? A year ago, they got in the red zone 5 times against Georgia. More than anybody else did. They didn't convert enough of those into touchdowns. They had a lead at the half against Georgia. They didn't have the ability to hang in that ball game. Can they keep this into a 60-minute game in Sanford Stadium? I'll say this. I don't expect Tennessee to flinch, given what we've seen out of Tennessee to this point. Should be a fun atmosphere. Should be a great day in Athens, Georgia.
Brent, be well, sir. Good morning. Enjoy your Sunday, and thank you so much for taking the time with us today, and I'll talk to you again down the line.
Great to see you, Jeff. Appreciate you having me on. Have a great Sunday, and in college football fun.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's a great thing, and I'm glad Tennessee's good again, and I'm glad to talk to you again, sir. Be good.
Thanks, man.
That's Brent Hubbs of VolQuest. He does a very, very good job. That entire staff does. You guys check it out. By the way, if you haven't joined that, I think for their site right now, it's just $1 for the year. So I think Matthew threw it up there on the screen. Once again, a reminder, you can subscribe to VolQuest for just $1 for 1 year. In fact, on that note, all of the sites do a tremendous job for On3. We had Brent Hubbs on. I thanked him just a moment ago. Want to thank Tyler Horka yet again. That website, Blue and Gold, I believe just $10 for the season. That is right. There, it's up on our screen, $10 all the way into next football season. You get that. And then finally, we thank our friend Spencer Holbrook, who joined us at the outset of the show. Letterman Row, they're $1 for 1 year or 4 months for $1. You want to do the $1 for the year. There's no fooling around there. Make sure it happens. And Ohio State, another one of those teams so that we talk about seemingly on a weekly basis, and for good reason. They get a bit of a breather. Tennessee does not. Notre Dame trying to remain formed. They don't get a breather. They get Clemson coming up next. College football is spectacular yet again, and I think there's a little bit more balance in the sport this year than there's been in the last few years, and that's exciting for all of us that love the game and want to see more competitive balance. I think you'd like to see 8 teams capable, 10 teams capable, more than that if you could help it, but usually you don't. Usually you get 2 or 3. I think it's opened up a little bit more this year, and that's made this a little bit more intriguing. Every other Saturday, we have a big upset. We see a top 10 team lose. We see a moment where the paradigm shifts a little bit, and maybe you don't know what you thought you knew, which is a beautiful thing about college football. I want to thank Director Matthew, as I call him. Dear friend, produced today's show, did a wonderful job as always. I want to thank all of you. Thank my 3 guests. You guys were here every Sunday, 11 a.m., wrapping up the top 25 for On3. We'll do it again next weekend. Join us. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Share with your friends. We'll have more experts on again next weekend. Enjoy your Sunday, everybody. Enjoy the football, and I'll talk to you again next time.